Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a mindset mastery coach, transformational hypnotherapist, and attachment style specialist. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into the mind of the dismissive avoidant, and I'm going to cover a few things. I'm going to cover the sudden breakup and where that stems from. I'm going to cover the breakup for them short-term and long-term and what they're going through, as well as answer the question, the burning question of, do they actually regret the breakup? So let us dive in. This is a topic I've been wanting to cover for a long time. And this is something I get a lot of questions on, is what in the hell happened? Because there's so much confusion in the aftermath of the discard or the breakup. If you'd like a one-on-one session with me, I do work with clients individually. You can book a free 15-minute discovery call using the link to my calendar below. And stay tuned, guys. I have a lot of stuff coming up this summer. I have an online course that you can do at your own pace, in your own time, in the comfort of your home. And I'm also going to be launching a live version of that, where there will be live calls with me in a group format. You don't have to be on video. You can just be on audio. You can, again, listen at your own pace. And there will be live calls and live hypnosis sessions for that. So stay tuned. I'm very excited for these projects that I'm working on. Now, what I want to first say on this topic of this matter that we're discussing today is that someone with a dismissive avoidant attachment style craves space. Their attachment system craves space. However, in the beginning of the relationship, that will often show up very differently and distinctly. And I'm going to talk about why that is, because that's confusing when they come on so strong and so loud in the beginning. And I want to talk about, is that real? Was that fake? Were they messing with your head? What was really going on? So I'm going to answer all of those questions. I want to also state that a dismissive avoidant does have feelings. I can't tell you how many comments I see on my page, on my channel here, and on just other social media pages and channels. Oh, the dismissive avoidant's just a narcissist. They don't have any feelings, blah, blah, blah. That's false. That is a false narrative, and it's also a victim mentality and mindset. You chose this person, so therefore it is your obligation and responsibility to understand why. And also, they are a human being. So I will not allow that kind of content on my channel. You will be blocked, and you will not be allowed to make any additional comments. So being avoidant doesn't mean that they have feelings. It means that there's a fear of feelings. And in fact, a dismissive avoidant usually revels in the beginning stages of a relationship. It's very exciting for them. Think about why this might be. Why would an avoidant, particularly a dismissive avoidant, get so caught up in the beginning stages of a relationship? I'm going to tell you why. It's because it's something that they lack inside of themselves. This is the anxious avoidant trap. The anxious has something, right, is tapped into their feelings in a way that the avoidant probably never has been, or at least not since childhood. And then the avoidant has something that the anxious is after, which is a separation from their feelings, so they can actually take a breath of fresh air and just move through life a little more logically. So both has something that the other can offer. So in the beginning, this is the excitement, this is the draw and the magnetism of the anxious and the avoidant. But then down the line, as things get more serious, guess what? Those attachment wounds come flying out, there's triggers left and right, and suddenly you're both operating from a child mentality and a child mindset. And that's what I see in the majority of the clients that I work with. So ultimately, they feel like they don't really need somebody. They don't really need a relationship. And here's the kicker that's true about a true dismissive avoidant. They'll look at you and your need for closeness and intimacy as a weakness. They look at their need for independence and their ability to create that for themselves as a strength. And that's a fallacy, because it's not a weakness to need somebody. It's actually just, it's part of the human experience. It's part of human nature to need connection and closeness and intimacy in various forms, and to crave love and to be loved and give love. But for a dismissive avoidant, they see it as their strength. In fact, they wear it loud and proud. Like, I am a dismissive avoidant, I don't need anybody. But that's simply not the case. Because at the core and the root of a dismissive avoidant is loneliness and dread, not wanting to end up alone, not wanting to die alone. There is a lot of fear there and a lot of depth there that they just don't necessarily reveal to anybody. So once the demands and commitment of a relationship start to kind of rear up, and once you kind of start to state your needs, then that starts to exceed their capacity and their ability, their container to be able to provide that for you. And that's when they're more likely to bail. So naturally this complicates, right, a long-lasting relationship with anybody. It just can't really happen. So let's talk about, why did your dismissive avoidant ex suddenly break up with you, seemingly out of the blue, why this was so confusing, and what might actually have been going on. So to understand how someone with this attachment style can just kind of, it's like there's a volume knob, right? Or like in relationship, in love, out of relationship, out of love. And it's like they can just turn it on and turn it off at a moment's notice. But you have to learn about their fears and their anxieties and their attachment wounding and where this really comes from. And particularly their difficulty with closeness and intimacy that stems from their childhood. So at the beginning of the relationship, you and the DA were likely head over heels. There was a lot of passion and maybe even a lot of sex, and just you felt really connected. And you may have even felt like, this is my person. I finally met my person. So some people explain that this connection felt magnetic, it felt instantaneous, it felt like a soul bond. I've heard that from so many clients, and it just felt really real, like this person really wanted to show up for you. I understand. I have been there. And after a period of time, after some months have gone through, and after life starts to get real and things start to happen, and stress in particularly starts to bubble up in your relationship as you have demands. Now notice how as you start to voice your demands, you likely didn't really notice that your dismissive avoidant partner had demands. And that's probably because they didn't. They were taught from a very young age that their needs were not valued, and so they were invalidated. So therefore they don't voice their needs, because remember, they've attuned to this as a source of weakness. If I have needs and I express them, then I'm weak. If I'm able to take care of everything myself, even if it means I'm, digging my own grave per se and doing everything by myself, then at least it'll be done right, and at least I won't have to rely on anybody, and at least I'll know that I got it done. At the expense, of course, of developing true connection and true bonding. So as you get to know each other, the intimacy and the closeness naturally increases, right? You naturally want the progression of closeness and intimacy in the bedroom. You want it when you're having conversations, as you're starting to plan your life together. Maybe you start to talk about getting engaged or getting married. And as you grow closer and closer, before you know it, both of your attachment systems are fully online. Your attachment wounding is out in the open. It's like a big gaping wound for both of you. It's oozing. And you didn't know it was there because maybe you were single for several years, or maybe you dated partners who didn't challenge you in this way. But now those attachment systems are fully switched on, and those old default habits and mannerisms and patterns have come out to play. And when this happens, guys, things get really real really fast. So while you might enjoy this sort of enhanced feeling of closeness, this deeper intimacy and connection with this person, they're already thinking about, how can I get out of here? Like their alert system, their inner alert system is already sounding. So you want more and more of this closeness and intimacy naturally, while the DA sees it vastly differently. So to them, intimacy is a true threat. It's a threat to their survival. It's a threat to their independence. It's a threat to their ability to take care of themselves. It's a threat to their own sense of self. They begin to feel overwhelmed. And the only thing that's on their mind at this point is, how do I get back to safety? How do I get back to land? Because I'm out here and there's a storm brewing, and I'm in this ship with this person and it's sinking, and they expect me to do something about it, and I don't know what to do about it because I'm not even connected to myself. So let me jump ship at the first chance that I get. And if that involves them running away from you, running away from your relationship and saying you're incompatible or whatever, refusing to go to therapy, refusing to even talk to you about it, then doesn't matter. Because to them, their nervous system is screaming at them at this point. It's screaming at them to get away and get to safety. And you represent the opposite of that. You are danger. Literally, it's like you're wearing the label, or you're wearing like a danger suit. And they're like, oh no, that's a hazmat suit. I can't go there. That is not a safe space for me emotionally. So what happens now in the aftermath of this? What's happening? And how do they actually handle the breakup? How do they handle this internally? And what are they actually going through? I think a lot of people think that the DA is not affected at all. And that couldn't be further from the truth. DAs, as I've stated in previous videos, I might have even stated it here, they are deeply lonely individuals. They don't want to be alone. It's just that they don't know how to sustain a relationship. They don't know how to actually be in a relationship that requires them to open up, be vulnerable, and connect in deeper ways. So even though they crave it, they also don't know how to handle it when it actually arrives. They're not, guys, they're human beings. So they like to think that they have a lot of emotional control, and particularly in the event of a breakup. They want to be the ones to initiate it. They want to be the ones to push you away because they want to believe, I have control in this situation. I have control of myself. I have control of how I respond. And therefore, if I can just control, contain, then nothing will overflow. And I can get back to my life the way it was. But the truth is that their life the way it was lonely and empty. But that's, again, their nervous system is screaming at them, abort mission, get away, get to safety. And that's all they can think about. So at the end of the day, know that they can't control all of their emotions. They can contain and control and be logical and stoic and detached and dismissive all they want, but those feelings are inevitably going to bubble up, probably at very inconvenient times. They can bubble up as anger, which is basically just sadness distorted. It can show up as, yelling at their children. It can show up as them getting frustrated at work, but it's going to show up and bubble up in their life. Maybe it's in the moments at night when they're alone and the lights are off and the stars are out and it's just them and there's no more distractions. There's nothing good on TV. Nobody's calling them back when they suddenly have to sit with themselves. It is hard enough to sit with yourself in this world because of all the distractions we've created for our ego. But to be a dismissive avoidant and try to sit with yourself, all the more challenging. When a close relationship has truly touched their sense of self, which relationships can and will do for a dismissive avoidant, and maybe you've created maybe you've been able to somewhat create a chink in their armor. If that's happened, if your relationship was deep, or if you were able to get to them in a way that maybe nobody else has, then they're going to feel the loss. They just might not show it. So they will have recurring thoughts. They will go back to memories, but due to their inability to really have healthy coping mechanism skills, their distress, their pain, their suffering is often prolonged. So here's what happens. If you're the partner of the dismissive avoidant, you likely will have already healed. You're starting to move on. You've been to therapy. You're okay. I'm learning about my attachment wounds, my attachment system. I want to heal. I want to become secure. What do I need to do? While the dismissive avoidant has fallen back into old patterns and cycles. Remember, they think that once they got away from you and you are the threat, oh, well, that was the only reason I felt this way was because of him or her. When in reality, it's inside of them. So until they can come to that conclusion and have a deeper understanding that this isn't about the partner, this is actually about me, just like it's about you as the partner of the DA, it's about us, and it's an opportunity to really self-actualize, or at least get on the journey, climb the rungs of a ladder towards self-actualization. I don't think we reach that or nirvana in this lifetime. I think we reach that when we die, but at least we can be on the path to self-enlightenment, self-awareness, understanding of self, so that we can do better and be better in our next relationships. But with somebody who's so afraid of showing emotions even to themselves, this presents such an incredible challenge. Let's talk about the short term effects for the dismissive avoidant after the breakup that they initiated. They see themselves as very self-sufficient, the opposite of vulnerable. They're independent, self-sufficient, they don't need anybody, and it's safer that way. So they've gotten themselves to safety, they're breathing a sigh of relief, and they're like, that was close. That was a close call. That person almost got too close to me. So in the aftermath of that painful breakup, they're less likely to turn towards friends and family, turn towards a support system or a therapist. They're much more likely to try to deal with things on their own. What does that look like? Well, that looks like distracting. It looks like dismissiveness. It looks like logical. It looks like pouring themselves into work, becoming a workaholic. It looks like pouring themselves into maybe their children's lives, doing anything to avoid the inner work and avoid really dealing with themselves. So due to their inability to truly process, to truly sit with these painful emotions and just be with them and acknowledge them and honor them, they often will go to great lengths to suppress them and even deny them. Like deny that they're, oh, I'm fine. Friends like, how are you doing? Like, you just went through a divorce, man. That's probably pretty intense. I'm fine. Oh, I'm fine. I'm just working a lot. Okay, but that doesn't really answer the question of how are you doing? So thanks to their rational way of kind of moving in the world, they may even appear to succeed in suppressing and denying. But remember, this is temporary because, guys, eventually we all have to not only meet our maker, but we have to meet ourselves. Even if it's at the end of life, like at some point there's a point where we have to meet our own self and look in that mirror. Okay, so that's in the short term. Now let's talk about the long term for the DA. Long term, what's going on in the dismissive avoidance world and mind after the breakup. So at first, again, like I said, almost instantaneously, there's a sense of relief. There's a sense of like cutting off a limb, like, oh, I don't have to deal with that broken limb anymore. The broken limb being your relationship. I don't have to deal with that incompatibility. We were just incompatible. It was never going to work. They weren't my soulmate after all, and whatever other lies they want to tell themselves. But eventually they too are going to have to process this loss and process the breakup. Especially if that relationship and you meant a lot to them, especially if you did have that impact and you did create that chink in their armor. They can't just escape this. That's not how it works. But this is incredibly difficult for a DA. It's incredibly difficult. So because they're so inclined to suppress anything that's distressing or painful, the only way they can really survive this breakup is by deactivating or turning off. That's why, for instance, I'll share this with you. Several months ago, I wanted to have a conversation about my divorce, and I was told by my ex-husband, I don't want to do a post-mortem on our marriage, Sarah. Matter-of-factly, logically, he was pissed off that I wanted to. He was angry that I was trying to, in his mind, he felt relief and he was deactivating from the relationship and from me and from his feelings. How dare you come in and try to reactivate those painful feelings for me and talk about what happened? And I was just like, well, this is what people do. This is how you heal, is you talk and you share. We eventually were able to share a little bit, and he even expressed some emotion, but there was such a like denial. There was it was like God, like a force that was preventing him from actually being open with me. And then he shut off, after that, like he shut down and shut off. And so that's what happens, is they may open up and then they'll shut down. You get a piece of them, you get a glimpse into the beautiful person they were in the beginning, and then they shut down because it's not safe. So they might ghost you, guys. They might move on right away to another partner. The ghosting is incredibly difficult. Please know that it's not and was never about you. This is about their inability to process this, their inability to sit with their own pain. So they might even go so far as to, change jobs, change schools, whatever they need to do to just be away from you. So distracting themselves with a rebound is not out of the question. I would say like maybe 50% do that, 50% don't. They just distract themselves with other things. So let's move on to the question of, does a dismissive avoidant regret breaking up with you? This is an interesting question. They do and they don't. Because they fear intimacy and closeness, they feel being seen as weak or unworthy. They have a core defective wound. Every attachment style, every insecure attachment style has a core wound. For the DA, it's defectiveness. So they don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want to be seen as unworthy. And in fact, part of their intimacy issues stem from worrying that they will be perceived that way, which is interesting because they're the ones who, I'll get back to that in a minute. People with this attachment style, they want to be seen as resilient. They want to be seen as strong. They want to be seen as almost impenetrable. And it can feel that way when you're on the receiving end of this breakup. So to them, being overly emotional or even just tapped into their emotions is the opposite of that. They have to have their armor. They have to, it's like proud. I'm proud to be this. I've gotten through life this way. This is how I've gotten through life. Well, no, you're not really moving through life in a true and authentic way. You're just sort of surviving life. And that's not the same thing as truly living life. So it makes it really hard to know whether they regret the breakup, right? Because they're likely they're not gonna tell you. They're not gonna tell you they missed you. They're not gonna tell you they want to see you again. So deciphering someone's emotions is already difficult, but especially when you're dealing with a dismissive avoidant. So when they don't share anything at all, and they're not sharing their feelings, they're not telling you they missed you, they're not calling you, they're just doing nothing. It's like they've disappeared. You can feel like you never mattered to this person, especially if they've ghosted you. So you may not hear it directly from them ever. And I want to say that. You may never hear a regret from them. You may never hear an I'm sorry. You may never hear it I miss you. You may never hear that from this person. But there is a chance that they're harboring some regret. It's just that you probably won't see it. So this brings me to the next point. What do they actually get out of a relationship? So it's sort of like they enjoy the beginning stages of love because that's really exciting. And remember, it's activating something in them that's been deeply suppressed. Especially if you come in anxious or even fearful avoidant, they're like, oh, this is so exciting. It's like radically different than what they know. And I don't know any other word. It excites their nervous system. It excites them until it gets too difficult. But they're like, for any of us, when there's passion in the beginning, it's just intoxicating. It's a drug, right? Our dopamine, our serotonin is flowing, and eventually oxytocin flows, and we bond. But remember, the DA doesn't bond. So that dopamine hit and rush is really what's driving them in the beginning of the relationship. So especially when they're paired with an anxious ambivalent, remember, they're able to find in that person all of the things that they feel like they're not connected to within themselves. So they find the giving nature, the sensitivity, the connection to deeper emotions, and just this outpouring of love that they never got as a child, by the way. So it's gratifying. It makes them feel whole. That defective wound isn't even on display at this time. But because they're so afraid of expressing these things themselves, it can feel amazing when someone expresses it to them. It can feel like, wow, I'm special. I'm not defective after all. I can be in a relationship. This can work for me. And just by being in your presence, it can make the DA feel alive. It can activate something in them that's been dormant, that's been hidden, that's been suppressed, that's almost been dead. Like it's like the resurrection of those feelings that maybe they remember from a very young age before their attachment system came online. So they just feel, and they're able to tap into that in the beginning. And it's very exhilarating, but it also starts to trigger them. How do I sustain this? It triggers their ultimate fear of a sustained relationship with passion, with intimacy, with somebody expecting things from them, like the expectation that I can give this to you long term. So I'm gonna end the video there. I know it's a bit of a cliffhanger, but we're gonna talk about why they fear intimacy in the next video, so stay tuned for that. And if you have any other questions, have a look around the channel, drop a like, share, subscribe, and comment. All of these things will greatly help the channel grow organically. And if you just want to share your experience, drop it in the comments below. I try to read, even if I can't respond to every comment at this point. And I look forward to seeing you guys in my upcoming online classes, the live class, as well as the one-on-one sessions. Have a beautiful day, guys. Thank you for being here, and take really good care of yourselves. Bye.